Hi, I was one of these kids, or lazy rotten kid, who started smoking cigarettes at around the age of 11 or 12. A group of us boys used to put together whatever little change we had and go to a nearby bar. We didn't go actually into the bar. There were always, and at a bar, was a cigarette machine out in the little vestibule. And I'm sure we weren't the only little gang that went into these places, put our coins in the slot, and got our cigarettes. And so I started on the sneak with a bunch of other rotten kids at around 11 or 12 years old. And it was a progressively bad habit. It got worse and worse. I tried to stop a couple of times before I got drafted into the Army. And actually, when I got drafted into the Army, I was on a quitting streak that didn't last. Now, back then, the Army was a cigarette smoker's culture. Number one, cigarettes at the Army Post Exchange were practically free. Number two, they encouraged us to smoke. Anytime a company, for example, would be on a march and stop for a break, the sergeant or even the lieutenant would call out, "Smoke 'em if you got 'em." And that we did, almost all of us. And I certainly was one of them. And so by the time I had been in the Army for about a year, I was up to 2 packs a day. Now, I tried to quit after about a year in the Army, when I was up to 2 packs, and I was on my way to doing it when my name came down for the Vietnam levy. In other words, I was notified that I would soon get orders to go to Vietnam. And I started smoking like a chimney once again. Now, if you go to my story about how I tripped over a wrinkle in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, you'll see that I ended up not in Vietnam at all, but at Fort Wadsworth on Staten Island in New York City. It's a long story. It's sort of funny. It wasn't funny when it was happening, but it became funny. And actually, Fort Wadsworth was a funny place, and I'm going to have more to say about Fort Wadsworth, the funny place. Anyway, I was going back and forth to court, criminal court in New York City, on a trumped-up charge that grew out of a demonstration. And when I had reached 89 days left in the Army, I was notified that the grand jury had thrown out all felony charges against me. Now, what that meant was I wasn't going to go to jail. My next court hearing was after my Army separation date, so the Army was not going to be involved even if I was convicted. And I wasn't going to go to Vietnam because the Army did not send soldiers overseas who had less than 90 days left to serve. So all in all, I had plenty to celebrate. It's also pretty close to my birthday, and I have a story about that one too. A Fort Wadsworth birthday. I might get to that, but not now. So, partly in celebration, after duty was over, and I went to visit my parents down in the East Village, and I went over to the 14th Street Y swimming pool, and I tried to do a little trick that I had always done when I was younger, and I used to get a kick out of it, and maybe it shows what a rotten kid I was. I would go down to the very bottom of the swimming pool, holding my breath, until people up top started to worry about where I was. So I dove down to the bottom of the pool at the Y, and I tried to hold on to the bottom of the pool, and I almost lost it. It was just by a fraction of a second that I got up above the surface of the water before the water started rushing into my nose and mouth. I got out of the pool. I went to the locker. I took my half-pack, unfinished pack of cigarettes out of my shirt pocket. I threw them in the garbage. I went to a nearby drugstore and bought a pack of Nicoban, which was a nicotine substitute chewing gum. I used that for 2 weeks, and I never smoked a cigarette since. But I have to tell you, I have dreamt of smoking up until 3 years after I quit. It was very, very difficult, and you've got to really want to do it, and you ought to do it. Number one, it costs so much. I see advertisements for cigarettes in New York City at more than $11 a pack. $11 a pack. $80 a week. You know what you could do with $80 a week? Wow. I mean, that's still some groceries there or other things, amusements or savings that would do you well. Also, it is a threat to your health. And I do sort of agree with Michael Bloomberg about his mania of trying to keep people healthy, his inner Jewish mother. But I don't agree with his methods of doing things. So please, think about quitting smoking. You'll be doing yourself a favor. Even if you try and fail, try again. New York City has a program, I believe, that's supposed to help. I don't know if it does or it doesn't, but you can call 311 or go to newyorkcity.gov and find out about it. Thanks.